Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the June 11th, 2024 regular meeting of the Board of Directors. I will now call our meeting to order. Thank you to those attending in person tonight and those staying engaged by watching our recording at a later time. The public is reminded that if they wish to speak during community comment, they will need to fill out a speaker form located in the lobby on the table and turn it in to Board Secretary Kim Coven, seated at the end of the table on my left. Comments will take place during the designated community comment portion of our agenda. Before we dive into tonight's agenda, I want to take a moment to introduce those seated at the table with me. To my right, we have Superintendent Degner, Directors Eastham and Williams. To my left, we have Vice President Clausen, Directors Finch, and on speakerphone, we have Directors Lingo and Abraham and Board Secretary Kim Coven. And with that, we will dive right into community comment. Thank you for your interest in the Iowa City Community School District and for your willingness to share your comments. You are reminded to give your name, address, and topic on which you plan to speak. During community comment, persons may speak to the board about topics relevant to the district. Speakers who make comments are reminded that they are responsible for their own statements and may be subject to legal action for those which include hate speech and that are threatening, harassing, or defamatory in nature. It is expected that speakers will address the board and each other with civility and abide by the stated time limits. All community comment directed at non-agenda items as well as agenda items shall take place at the beginning of the meeting, and speakers shall be limited to 4 minutes per speaker and 5 minutes for speakers who has the assistance of an interpreter. Speakers' time limit will be displayed on the screens at the bottom of the screens, including the one aboard Board Secretary Coven. The initial community comment period shall be limited to 1 hour. Remaining community comment, to the extent necessary, shall take place at the end of the meeting. The board will not engage in any discussion during public comment. The role of the board during this time is to listen. Any individual who does not abide by these rules or otherwise disrupts the meeting may be asked to leave and or referred to law enforcement. And with that, our first speaker is Lydia Petrosky. Microphone is right over on this side on the left, my left.
Good evening. My name is Lydia Petoskey. I'm at 1714 DeForest Avenue in Iowa City. I'm a former special education teacher, and I believe the students and staff in Iowa City deserve better student-centered policies that ensure safety for all. To that end, I would like to offer the following for further review and consideration. Number 1, many students in the district are not getting services written into their IEPs because of staff shortages. The shortages are directly impacted by a program that does not ensure safety for staff or students. ICCSD uses QBS as an intervention for students who have unsafe behaviors while simultaneously integrating them into general education settings, which cause unsafe behaviors. The premise of QBS is applied behavioral analysis intended to prevent outbursts. When outbursts occur, the response is to block hits, kicks, etc. Being asked to block an outburst directly puts staff members in unsafe positions and has caused property and bodily damage and made many people feel unsafe at work or school. I believe students and staff in this district should feel safe. I propose a policy to ensure a quarterly review of injuries, property damage, and disbursement of resources and a public report of these findings. The committee evaluating should consider racial backgrounds of who gets staffed and which demographic of students get consistent services. This report should be made public. Number 2, the district should consider for paraprofessionals and other impacted staff how property damage, injury, or the expectation of an unsafe workplace lead to continued shortages. Paraprofessionals provide direct service to students, have multiple jobs, and when they are injured in ICCSD, are they compensated by workers' comp for missing their other jobs? When their glasses are broken by a student who rips them off their face and stomps on them intentionally, whom they are not allowed to say no to, does the district pay for their replacement up front if they do not have the funds on hand? Does the district compensate them if they are unable to work, drive, or care for their families? This is a pattern, and ICCSD has a duty to ensure a safe environment for all. Number 3, part of the challenge at West is the district-developed service delivery plan, which the board approved. This PALO narrows options available for students and is not aligned with federal law, which provides an individualized range of service and support. Instead, the DDSDP continues to reduce services available to students while not providing support students need. If ICCSD is committed to the district-developed service delivery plan, then there should be a thorough understanding of who gets harmed by its implementations when schools are not fully staffed, general education teachers do not have the time, training, resources, or support, and special education teachers are expected to be the stopgap. Number 4, special education brings in federal dollars to support student needs, yet teachers do not have access to a budget, consistent policies to access materials required by IEPs, and has relied on donations to provide mandated services. I suggest a thorough review of Medicaid billing, utilization of funds, and allocation of resources based on funding. ICCSD is able to bill Medicaid in the ballpark of $60,000 per year for services to students, yet is not able to provide consistent paraprofessional support, which wages are under $25,000 per year, and resources claimed under Medicaid billing. Yet the district continues to bill for these services. The direction this district is going with high school math is harmful to both staff and students. There is a systemic reduction in support while requiring all students to pass algebra, geometry, and Algebra 2 in order to graduate from high school. The curriculum chosen for the alternate Algebra 2, conceptual algebra, is highly problematic and not designed for students who need additional support. When experts offered to provide this support, they were ignored.
Thank you. Next up is the approval of tonight's agenda. Is there a motion?
I move approval of the agenda for tonight.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Director Lingo, how would you like to vote? And Director Abraham?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Before we get to tonight's consent agenda, did directors have any questions regarding the bills that were reviewed this cycle? Hearing none, are there any items that directors would like to pull from tonight's consent agenda?
I'd like to pull item 8, the playground.
Okay. Item 8, the Van Allen grades 1 through 3 playground replacement. Are there any other items? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda minus item 8?
So moved.
Second.
Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Director Lingo, how would you like to vote?
Yay.
And Director Abraham, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. And next up is items withdrawn from consent agenda, Van Allen grades 1 through 3 playground replacement. Director Finch?
Thank you, President Malone. I just wanted to say thank you for including the drawings on this playground. I was just reviewing them and just wanted to go over this, I guess, for the public. The rubric is, I don't think you can get any closer with that rubric, 25, I think we're 23 and 27 on 2 of them. So I know that's very difficult to do. But as I was looking at schematics for the playground, you know, separate from the rubric. I was just trying to imagine if I myself were a first grader in a wheelchair, and you know what I might do on this playground. And you know, I see the ramp. There's some activity panels, and then the merry-go-round. But I guess I just wondered, can we do any better than this for our students? And so I wanted to propose that to you, and just to see what, you know, if there are any options to sort of enhance our experience for our students more than what I'm seeing here.
Well, I'll let Ben talk too.
Okay.
You know, I know a lot of it's a balance. You know, we have X amount of dollars, and so we try to balance it for everybody.
So there's actually a lot that's going on the playground that isn't necessarily obvious when you look at just the sheer numbers. Yeah, we do try to get the balance in there. There's also stuff like the outdoor classroom that adds activities. There's also existing equipment that's actually going to stay that adds activities, as well as hard surface activities. So as a bundle, we're kind of achieving that goal of trying to have that balance of activities for students of all ability levels. There are stairs on this playground, but they are stairs that meet like ADA compliance for those students that may be able to get out of the wheelchair and be kind of helped up to the top of the actual structure itself. But really those stairs are designed to get students to the elevation to be able to use slides, right? And those slides are important for developing vestibular skills. So some of those will be straight slides, some will be curved slides, and it's all intended so the student knows where their body is within space. So if that slide doesn't appear in that fashion, it might appear as like a standalone structure. So depending on what school you go to, you would actually see it not attached to that compound structure versus attached to that compound structure. But what isn't obvious in there is that we do have kind of that continuous process of bringing more and more activities to the playground. So this is not only covering the primary structure, but it's actually covering roughly, I think it's $20,000 of it is going towards extra activities that we're supplementing different playgrounds. So you would have seen something similar come through in Hills last year, Horns coming through this year, or Alexander I know is coming through. We're constantly adding more activities. So the year prior we actually added a goggle ball pit with an ADA gate on it so wheelchair can actually navigate in there, as well as we use FMP 2.0 funds to put a glider in there where a wheelchair can actually go up on the glider and, you know, a student can be with their peers on there. So, you know, with all the playgrounds, there is that kind of balance of trying to get all those necessary developmental skills.
So there's more to this playground than meets the eye. There's,
yeah,
as you said, okay.
Exactly. So what you're really looking at is just the physical structures that are going in, and it's only specific to 1 through 3. So there's also the 4 through 6. There's also the pre-K, which is a 2 to 5-year-old playground, and there's all those hard surface activities and the outdoor classrooms being built up there this year as well.
Okay, all right, thanks. That helps a lot. I did have one additional question on the engineered wood fiber, the EW. Are we doing testing on that, and how are those tests going?
Yeah, actually they are. We do test those. So when we install a new engineered wood fiber playground, we test it year 1 and year 2, and then we do it periodically in random tests as well. We usually hit in that 99 to 100% pass situation. Every once in a while, there's just, for whatever reason, an acorn or random stick. It just doesn't pass in one particular spot, in which case we just bring a guy in or a staff member to come in and kind of repack that and stabilize that spot. So yeah, it's actually working really well as far as testing and stuff goes.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks, Ben, I
betcha.
appreciate it.
Were there any additional questions or discussion? Hearing none, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the Van Allen Playground.
Second.
Any further discussion or questions? Hearing none, Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote.
Online voting is open. Director Lingo, how would you like to vote?
Yay.
And Director Abraham, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up, we have the last public hearing that Vice President Clausen will read for us, so take it away.
Now is the time and place for the public hearing on the proposed plans and specifications for the CFI Phase 2 remodel project. The Board of Directors set the date for this public hearing on May 28, 2024. Notice of public hearing was published in the Iowa City Press Citizen on May 29, 2024. The district will receive bids on this project at 2 p.m. on June 25, 2024 at the Facilities Management Conference Center, 1137 South Riverside Drive, Iowa City, Iowa. Notice to contractors was published as required by law in multiple statewide plan rooms and on the Iowa City Community School District website on May 29, 2024. Are there any questions from the board? Are there any questions from the public?
And I will close tonight's public hearing. Next up is policy review, the 900 series policies, which is the school district community relations and policy updates. Director Finch, were there any additions you wanted to add from our last meeting discussion?
I don't think so, President Malone.
All right. We will keep it moving. Next up is our quarterly financial report presentation. And I will just keep talking as Executive Director, CFO Kurth gets to the podium.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I will dive into this here tonight. So the third quarter financial report, remember this is the period ending March 31st of 2024, is available here on the board agenda. I'm not going to go through this in a ton of detail, but I do want to point out a few highlights and also address one question that we had received. And so this first slide here shows really receipts and disbursements for the year up to this point by fund. So general fund is the one that we've discussed the most, especially as we've been in budget reduction mode. That's primarily where we're focused. Spending authority relates to general fund. But this also shows breakdowns for the other funds, things like student activities, management fund that we use to pay for insurance and costs like that, our capital projects funds, that sort of thing. One question we did receive, and we had actually caught this as well after we posted this to the board agenda, is with the debt service fund, which is Fund 40. If you look all the way over to disbursements to date, it's $550, which is 0% of the budgeted disbursements of $26.7 million. We have, in fact, been paying our debts this year. The way bond payments work in Iowa, they're actually made at 2 points in the year. One of those is June 1st, so that's after this, and that's actually by far the largest series of payments. And then the other is made in December. We did make those, but this is a situation where it didn't get booked to show up in the system. It's unlikely that that would impact any of the other numbers reported here, because bond payments are one of the only things we pay that doesn't go through either accounts payable process or the payroll process. So that's kind of how that one got missed. We made the payments, we just didn't book it properly in our accounting system. So that's already been taken care of within the system at this point. But beyond that, I want to move down. And the next slide here, really for information for the board, for the public, is essentially the same data presented on the previous slide, but broken down. So you can see exactly where our revenues come from by fund, which portion is state, federally funded, et cetera. And then you can also see a breakdown of within those funds, what are we spending our money on, how much of that's going to salaries or benefits, things like purchase services, supplies, equipment, that sort of thing. As you look at those, you might notice that the purposes of the fund really jump out. You have something like, our PEPL fund, which has paid for no salaries, and the vast majority is going to equipment and services, as it should. I'm going to move down to the next slide, and I apologize for the font size on this one. We tried to squeeze a lot of information here. What this is really showing, the top chart is previous year, the bottom one is current year, and this is showing revenues by month. So you can see those revenues broken down by the state's defined categories over on the left, where those revenues are coming from. And if you can see the total year to date, if that's not too small, you'll notice that as of the end of March, we're actually tracking about $3 million higher in revenues than we were previous year. We will not end this year higher in revenue than previous year. And that's largely due to the impact of ESSER funds, which we claimed in sort of a backloaded way last year. So those mostly came in the fourth quarter. And so we will see this year's revenues be below last year's as we expected. And that really is one of the reasons that we were looking at where we could reduce our spending. And then the next slide is the same format, and this is showing expenditures by month. And this is one that I actually, it's probably my favorite slide in the presentation. And the reason it's my favorite is looking down at the chart that's down below. And the reason I like this one so much, first of all, it shows that we're a little bit over $9 million below where we were last year at the end of March in general fund expenditures, which is what our budget reductions were designed to achieve. So that is good news for the district. The reason that I like this chart, and you have to really look at it to see it clearly, but this year we recognized our need for even further budget work than what we had done last year coming into this fiscal year. We implemented mid-year reductions, and this chart actually shows that visually. Once it hits January, you can see that the difference between that top line, which is previous year expenditures, and the bottom line, which was kind of widening but sort of steady, beginning of the year through January, that difference begins to accelerate as we pass January. And a lot of that's due to those mid-year budget reductions that show up here in terms of reducing our expenditures for current year, ultimately widening that gap between current year and previous year as we look at that trend. So that's good news. It is what we expected. It's what I expected to see, but ultimately confirms that the efforts we put into place are being implemented, and we're seeing that show up in our balance sheet. And then the next slide that I have here just shows cash and investments. Just to break down, one thing that's really important to keep in mind is that within a school district, our cash assets in particular ebb and flow throughout the year. We receive funds during the school year. We don't receive funds during the summer by and large. And so you can kind of see, we started out the year, total of all funds cash, 35 million, that dropped to 22. Then we start to get more revenue back up to 30. End of fourth quarter will report even higher than that. And then as we work through the beginning of the next school year, that's when we start to eat into that a little bit. Ultimately, as we worked to define what our targets were in terms of that cash balance that we have on hand, this is where that will show up. So as we go forward, I'd hope to see a little bit more consistently high numbers across especially our general fund cash and investment totals. So if you look, for example, at total cash and investments, this chart bottom left, very first quarter, end of the first quarter, 5.9 million. For a budget of our size with the expenditures that we incur for payroll and that sort of thing, that's a pretty slim margin to be at in terms of our general fund assets. So that's a quick breakdown there. The next slide, the thing that I really want to highlight is in the chart bottom left, this is also in the table, line 34. And that's our unspent balance projection, currently $340,276. That's fairly consistent. We've seen that number decline a little bit throughout the year, and that's something I think I've shared with you a number of other times as it relates to our budget reduction conversations. But, as we refine what we're able to recover through certain, program changes and certain approaches, we've been able to hopefully refine that number. It's still far tighter than I'm comfortable with that being, hence the work that we're doing for next year and the years following. But looking and seeing that number still, maintaining a positive value, and then continued growth. And that 1.797 million we're projecting for next year is, again, very consistent with what we were projecting at the end of the second quarter, and aligns with where we had targeted in terms of the budget reductions we put in place this year, and then that'll go into place next year as well. So at that point, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Directors, any questions for CFO Kurth?
Just on that debt service, so that'll show up on the fourth quarter. We'll put all that in. Okay. Yeah, that just stood out because I imagine the people who should get that money would have been saying something.
Yeah, and those payments, like I said, that's sort of a unique payment, and it's one of the reasons why that didn't get coded in our system, because we don't actually make that payment. We have a separate third-party agent who pulls that money out of our accounts on our behalf, makes the payments on our behalf. So it's a little bit of a unique process.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say thank you for having such a clear presentation that is really easy to follow. So I appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, these graphs are helpful, for sure.
Great.
I agree with you. My favorite part is the graph.
Yep.
All right. Thank you so
All
much.
right, thank you.
Next up on our agenda is the discussion item of City of Coralville boundary recommendation. Just as a reminder, the board did receive a letter from Mayor Foster of Coralville on May 9th, requesting that the new Auburn Ridge development in Coralville be zoned for West High. Before I open it up for board directors, Superintendent Degner, did your team have any information you wanted to share or lead off the discussion with?
Yeah, I've talked to some of you about this individually once we were in receipt of the letter, and Adam's going to work to show you the map here, just kind of a highlighted portion or a pullout of where this development would be. There's kind of, my understanding is there's an existing Auburn Ridge, Auburn Hills area where we do have a number of students, and this is the area of development that's still somewhat being constructed or is still being constructed. We don't have an exact number of students. There's something like 5 to 7 houses. I know several of you have driven through it. That data is not showing up in our data pool yet to know exactly how many students are there. Obviously, there'll be more students. They seem to be fairly high-priced homes that are being developed in that area. So we have some things to probably help in the conversation, as you guys discuss it, or some things you might want to talk about. But we kind of thought first to hear the board's take on it and show you where it would be on the map, and then answer any questions you might have about any next steps or thoughts that you have. So anything I can answer off the top as Adam is trying to pull that map up.
So I assume for elementary, if we're thinking between West and Liberty, the elementary schools that we would be opting would be either Wickham or Penn. Would that be correct?
Potentially. There is some, there's some more options. I mean, we've looked at a few things that I think if the thinking's still current, unless the team's talked about it since I met with them yesterday, you could actually do a carve out to Coralville Central as well in a fashion. Kirkwood might be a difficult one because then you would have the situation where you're already telling the Kirkwood students that they have to go to Liberty. And so if you were going to zone them to Kirkwood, that would be kind of a tricky combination there. You'd have to rethink that. But Coralville Central could be in play, but the most likely and approximate one is probably Wickham that they would be zoned to instead of Penn.
And what would be the available capacity at those 3 elementaries?
I think at the elementaries, we would be fine capacity-wise, especially with, the 6th grade just being moved to the middle schools. I don't think we have capacity concerns, especially with a low number of students at this point. So I don't think there'd be any concerns there, Director Finch.
I was just wondering if there were some that had more available capacity than others.
I mean, I think we'd probably really answer that question about how it would affect staffing, right? If it would put if we knew the number of students and if it would tip us over into an additional section, that's probably a bigger concern than the actual
Right.
amount of students at the building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of those three buildings, Wickham by far would have the most available capacity. The others are closer to about 80%, where Wickham is right around 60% when we shared that data earlier.
Okay.
All right, Adam's got the map there. So you want to go ahead?
So I have a kind of a wide view here, and so this box indicates where this development is occurring. This attendance zone is the Wickham attendance zone. This attendance zone is the Penn attendance zone. The Coralville Central attendance zone is this one down here. This is the northern portion of the Lincoln attendance zone. And then zoning in a little bit more closely on this. You can see again, the edge of the Wickham attendance zone is here. The development area that's being discussed is this one right here, which is bordering Dubuque Street to its east, and then bordering the west end of the Auburn Ridge development to its west. I also pulled the current student demographics for the existing Auburn Ridge attendance zone, thinking that was a decent analog for the number of students who would be in this eastern side of the development eventually. And currently there are 13 high school students in the western side of the attendance zone.
Sorry, how many students again?
13 students, high school students.
We don't really think there'd be a busing impact. Most of the elementary schools would require busing based on the distance. I'm assuming secondary students would, or high school students at least, would be probably transporting themselves to whichever high school they'd be attending. But not a significant transportation cost when we looked at it.
Director Easton?
Thank you, President Malone. I visited the site with Director Williams, and just a couple of observations. One of my interest in pursuing this is because a local council, city council, asked us to look at an attendance area for a new subdivision, and suggested that we direct that attendance area to a high school, which would, and looking at the price of housing in this proposed development, would probably have a slight effect upon, beneficial effect upon the SES balance of the high school. So I'm thinking that this is a good thing for a local council to be doing. So maybe I would be interested in having some conversations with them about the various factors that would influence about what would be a decent resolution of their interest and our responsibilities. So there's that one process thing. I understand from conversations with some of you that there's some interest, or there's some thinking about what would be a reasonable resolution between elementary, middle school, and high school for this particular subdivision. This subdivision is obviously, to me anyway, a high-income subdivision. There's no room, there's no planning in it for any housing that's more modest in price, which would be affordable to folks with lower incomes. So I think it's something to consider in terms of what the council's thinking is and what our long-term interests are in SES balancing between elementary, middle, and high schools. But I know many of you have different, or have your own opinions, so I'd be happy, I'm interested in seeing what we're willing to do.
Yeah, I've read the letter and visited the site with Charlie, and in full disclosure, it's like my backyard, so I'm pretty familiar with the area. I think my concern is the sense I've always gotten from the administrative team is our RAM is most impactful and important at our elementary aged kids. That's why we have a RAM and we look at class sizes and resources at the elementary schools. We don't do that at our secondary buildings with our RAM. And so when I look at changing boundaries, I'm going to be first and foremost concerned with what does it do to our elementary schools, not so much concerned with how does it impact our secondary schools. And the proposal, if we move them to Wickham, what it would do is it would take students going to a group 2 school, because now we don't have 1 through 6, right? We've redid the RAM and we have group 1, which are our highest needs school, group 2, middle, and group 3, which are our lowest touch schools. What we'd be doing is we'd moving kids from a group 2 school to a group 3 school if they went to Wickham, which is, to me, absolutely the wrong direction that we're supposed to head in the RAM. I'd not heard the Coralville Central option, and I'm intrigued by that because Coralville Central is a group 1 school, and then we would be moving group 2 students to a group 1, and that's the direction that I think we could head. I don't know if we want to begin the process of having uncontiguous boundaries for elementary schools. I'd be interested in the admin team thought on that and if that presents challenges, because I don't think we have any right now. Looking at the boundary map in my head is we don't have islands. And I don't know if we as a policy want to start that practice of having islands. But I'm just not at all interested in moving these kids to Wickham. I don't think that serves our goals. I also think that when we look at our RAM, again, what I've heard from the admin team this past year, I do actually listen to everything you guys say, is FRL is but one component of our RAM. We look at ELL, we look at IEPs, we look at a whole host of factors. And so while these are very nice houses and none of the students there will likely qualify for free and reduced school lunch, I think that makes a lot of assumptions about the type of student they are, and we don't really know that because they could be kids that are ELL. I am friends with a former Penn family that adopted 4 boys from Brazil, and they were all ELL students. And so they could be a nonverbal autistic child that lives there that's a high-touch IEP. And I think at this point, it's also just a little too hard to know who's going to move in and how many students are we talking about and what those students look like and how it's going to impact the class sizes. I'm not sure if now, I appreciate the discussion and I think Charlie or Director Eastham that you're right that we should have the discussion, so I'm glad we are. I'm just not sure that development has been fully realized to take any concrete action at this time. And then finally, it's not always going to be possible, but if we're going to do boundary adjustments, I would kind of like to do more global boundary. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with the idea of doing ad hoc boundary adjustments every 9 months or year or what. But I think it makes more sense for us to take a holistic approach to, all right, now it's been 10 years since our last boundary adjustment, we've had all this new development, things are different than they were 10 years ago. Do we need to sit down and really look at how our boundaries should look rather than doing it piecemeal and then getting to that 10-year point and then redoing again? Boundary adjustments are hard on families. It creates change, and to the extent that we can provide stability and predictability in where their children will attend school, I do think that that's important too.
I think if you guys were going to press this on a next step, that's probably what we would have also identified tonight, Director Williams, is that, doing these in isolation is really tricky, right? And it's tricky for a few different reasons. The other thing we haven't even talked about with boundary changes or developments now is this element of school choice and impacts to families that way, and especially how that can, have a new lens into the conversation. Now, whether or not they choose to leave the district over something like that, if they're unhappy enough. But I do think it's a reality point for us now that we'd have to be sensitive to and consider. So just looking at one specifically and making a change, I think would get tricky. And we probably would have said that would be a good conversation for us to come back to in a more holistic way through that elementary configuration conversation. So we know we're kind of targeting to revisit that with you guys in July. And so that would have been, like I said, what we would have suggested as the next step is to try to look at it and zoom out a little bit larger than just this one development, if there was any kind of adjustments or different take you guys wanted to take on that. But I do think doing one in isolation, and we know we always come up with this or into this issue with elementary boundaries or secondary boundaries, is, people are buying homes and building homes there now with certain assumptions. And so just to kind of do this all of a sudden too, I think again, it's not a large number of people, but it's their house, right? It's their family that they've made a decision on at this point. So just some things to be sensitive to, I think, as you think about it. But again, that would have been probably where we'd have pointed as well.
I agree with all that. The thing is this development wasn't built, so we're not really disrupting folks who, there are people who, and when we drew this, when the city planned that, they certainly planned for those two neighborhoods to be one whole neighborhood. And so we did draw a boundary through what the city planned. Now, I would imagine nobody knew that or thought of it because the development wasn't there. There were no houses there for us to look at. But, from the city's perspective, there's a line right through a neighborhood that has a street that just continues on. It's not, it's not, it's connected in proximity, but for the people who live there, they'll probably all feel like they're in the Auburn Hills sort of neighborhood, right? It's, like the plan was for that road to continue and just that be all a part of the neighborhood right to the west. So in a way, I don't think we're disrupting a lot of folks. I don't know what's driving this. I will make a lot of assumptions here, but sometimes people with money do drive these kinds of things with their decisions. So my guess is folks maybe want to go to West, right? Like that is the choice that some folks are making. And I don't, frankly, when I see this as right by the Wickham, to me, that's just not, the appeal to me to Coralville Central is there is a wealthier neighborhood that buses down to Coralville Central. I think that's a unique situation we have in our community. The people in that neighborhood love that. They fought for it. They advocated for it. I think that creates an interesting dynamic. However, it's literally right by the Wickham neighborhood. The number of kids, I don't think either way it's going to bump our numbers one way or the other. I do, if we look at our high schools, the imbalance there would be, with Liberty having, a much lower, that's really the school that's most imbalanced as far as our secondary schools go from a FRL perspective. Again, I don't think the numbers are going to move that needle very much, but to me, I kind of like what Charlie said. When somebody comes to us with this, I don't have a really strong reason to say no. If it was disruptive to folks, if we were going to do I wouldn't want to do even remote. The only time we've ever done wholesale boundaries is when we've added a new school. Now, granted, the last time we did more than we probably, quote unquote, needed to because we had a new school in North Liberty and we changed all of the elementary boundaries in the district. But that's the time we've gone in with big boundary changes and we've opened a new school and then we took that opportunity to move some things around. So we haven't quite gone in. I'm not saying not to do that. I think you do have to look at these things every now and again as demographics change. But to me, I don't have a strong reason to not go along with, what, Mayor is asking us to do. They want these folks to go to West. Again, I don't have a strong reason to say no, just because this will divide that neighborhood. It will feel like you're going to two separate elementaries in the same neighborhood, two separate high schools in the same neighborhood. And I don't know, Lisa, if that's your backyard. It looked like from the other picture I saw where I could see the development, that it was a part of that neighborhood to the west, less so than a part of anything to the north or to the east.
So I actually would push back on that because access to Dubuque Street is how that neighborhood will operate. That's the main thoroughfare. And if you go through Auburn Hills, you really have to meander through the neighborhood to get to First Ave. So to me, this feels more like the Dubuque Street subsidiary than Auburn Hills. There's a creek that's not on the map, and so there's this water that has always kind of divided Auburn Hills from our side of Dubuque. And they've been two very distinct neighborhoods, because then there's a lot of timber around that creek. And so you're really far away from the Auburn Hills people on the Dubuque side. There's also that really nice Dubuque Street bike path, and that makes, it just makes the community, I associate it more with the Dubuque Street community, not the Auburn Hills. But someone in Auburn Hills, Jane, I know you live over there too, may feel differently.
So I go walking in this region all the time, almost every day. And actually, I agree with you, Director Williams, that it feels like a separate neighborhood, because even though it's the same road, there's a long ways between the last house in this neighborhood and the first house in this neighborhood. And you are correct. It feels like it's more of a neighborhood off of Dubuque Street.
Yeah.
I don't really have strong feelings either way. I've kind of gone back and forth on this in my head. The one thing that I thought, well, maybe a student might ride their bike to Wickham from there, although they cross an ever-increasingly busy highway now, so that's probably not a good thing. I'm intrigued by the Coralville Central idea, though, so I don't really have strong feelings on any of this.
I just want to reach out to see if those on the phone have any comments. Director Lingo, Director Abraham, before I jump in, I wanted to see if you had any comments you wanted to add. Kim, can you bend the mic more?
I guess when I drove it felt like one neighborhood to me, but I understand what you're saying about the timber and the creek, and I guess I'm curious, why Megan Foster is asking this, and I'm very intrigued by the idea of Coralville Central as well. So I think maybe we need to talk to the Coralville City Council, or maybe we need to see if Coralville Central, if that's really a viable option to do that. It seems like a number of people have mentioned that feeling better than Wickham. I don't know. I get it's super complicated. There's way more, because then there's the shires that are south of Auburn Ridge that go to Liberty, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Director Abraham, you would kind of, if Adam zooms out here, for those in the room will be able to see, you'd kind of have to make a diagonal strip. And I do think it would interfere with Lincoln too, right? So that suggestion, you would kind of make that little swath that he's highlighting right there is how you would get it to be contiguous to Coralville Central.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're right, it would affect another neighborhood too. It's not just doing this one in isolation, unless you would do a complete island.
Right.
Director Lingo?
My real addition is that I concur with Director Williams and what she has said. I can't really say anything better on the topic than what she has already said. So thank you, Director Williams.
Okay. My only concern is if we do this in isolation because a municipality requested, what type of precedent we are then setting where we're changing our boundaries or looking at our boundaries, not based on our needs or our analysis, but the requests from municipalities. Because if you do this for one, how can we say no to North Liberty City Council? How can we say no to University Heights or Iowa City or Hills? I mean, it becomes that never-ending, we want this now. So I like the idea of what Director Williams and Superintendent Degner suggested, that instead of looking at this in isolation, absolutely, we can have a conversation with the city, but we need to look at it from our standpoint on what will better serve our students and our staff.
And I agree, I'm not going to fight this. I will say we do have islands. There's one right there. I mean, like we do have some areas, Forest View, Boston Way, where it is an island. They're low-income islands, and I understand the reasoning is numbers. You have a lot of folks who live in a small area. It's easier to bus. We don't have any islands of wealth, I will say. I know that's a lot harder to do. You don't get the population density that might justify it, but we do have islands. And again, I hear what everybody's saying. I don't have and I would like what what Director Abraham said about, wondering where this is coming from. But, we do have some islands for it, and those are purely for demographic balance. Like, that's why we have those in there. So, again, I know that would be trickier with any of these neighborhoods where you're not going to get population density to really move those numbers very, very strongly. But we just want to point out we do have some islands.
So I would think, Superintendent Degner, you mentioned that coming back to this in July?
Yeah, we have the elementary school configuration targeted for that second July meeting. So we could come back to this then. We could also our team could engage with Coralville a little bit to try to learn more about the request and then revisit it at that point.
I think that's what we heard tonight, that would be ideal, and we can bring this back to that conversation in July. Okay, that takes us to tonight's action items. First up is the 900 Series Policy School District Community Relations. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the 900 series policies.
Second.
Is there any discussion or questions? Hearing none, Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Director Lingo, how would you like to vote?
Yay.
And Director Abraham, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm also a yay vote, Kim.
Thank you, Director Clausen. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is policy updates. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the updates to policies 415.6, 507.9 R1, and 905.1 G2 as presented in the agenda for tonight's meeting.
Second.
Is there any questions or discussion? Hearing none, Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Director Lingo, how would you like to vote?
Yay.
And Director Abraham, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is the superintendent contract. Did directors want to make any comments or have any questions regarding the contract?
So I can make my comments now, or I could make them after we do a motion.
But
Okay.
it's up to you.
Okay. Well, so tonight I'm going to be voting no on the contract, and I don't want my vote to be misconstrued. It's not that I am against a contract. I am just against this particular contract. And I've had this discussion with the board and with the superintendent already, but just for the public, I wanted to explain my position on this. And so my issue with the contract is in the way that the compensation is structured, specifically the deferred compensation piece, which is at 15%. 4 years ago, this deferred compensation was at 10%. Then it was moved to 13%. And last year, against my opposition, it was moved to 15%. Now, just keep in mind that no other district in Iowa, to my knowledge, gives 15% compensation, deferred compensation. Most similarly sized districts are between 5 and 10%. Even Des Moines, which has twice the number of students as Iowa City, does not give 15%. And the issue with giving that large of deferred compensation as a part of the total compensation is that it makes the salary appear artificially low. This may seem nitpicky, but I believe that this contract, this agreement that we have with our superintendent, our only employee, sets the tone for our relationship and our expectations. So in terms of how we present data, how we construct the agenda, and how we have communication with the public, this is about our expectations for transparency. I would rather see a contract that provides more clarity and is more straightforward. If this board wants to provide compensation at the top range of the superintendents in the state, which is what we're trending towards, then I would prefer that we do it simply by raising the salary and not with this large chunk of it being deferred compensation. I feel that that is a more honest and transparent way of doing our contract. This is my opinion. My vote will be a reflection of this opinion, and again, I don't want my vote to be misconstrued. I'm not against a contract, I am just against this contract.
Any additional comments, Director Eastham?
I'd like to thank Director Finch for her views on this matter and voicing them for everyone. I'm going to approve this contract. For one thing, overall, I'm very pleased with the current superintendent's work with us, with the district, and with students and families in this district to obtain and advance our goals and objectives as put forth in our strategic planning. I have some appreciation of the notion about how to pay compensation. I'm not personally not in favor of doing compensation and a deferred compensation component too, as part of the overall compensation package. I do believe that we are being transparent. The contract's a public document and it's easily examined. But it's, there's a difference in opinions about how to structure compensation for superintendents in the state. And we are choosing a fairly unique one, which I think is appropriate under all the circumstances here.
Any additional comments? Well, I do want to thank Superintendent Degner for his work and commitment and dedication over the last year. I know it has not been an easy year with some of the decisions you have had to present to the board, but I know just from working with your team that it requires a strong leader in order to sort of rally the troops even during hard years where they're still excited about the work that they're doing. And I think a lot of that has to do with the superintendent that's showing that same excitement to the team. So thank you for that. With that, I would entertain a motion.
I move that we approve the superintendent contract as presented.
Second.
Any additional questions or comments? Hearing none, Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Director Lingo, how would you like to vote?
Yay.
Director Abraham, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast and the motion carries with Director Clausen, Malone, Eastham, Williams, Abraham, and Lingo voting yea, and Director Finch voting nay.
Thank you. The final action item for tonight is the recommended approval of the resolution authorizing transfer from the general fund to the student activity funds for protective gear. Is there a motion?
I move adoption of the resolution authorizing transfers from the general fund to student activity funds for protective gear.
Second.
Is there any questions or comments? Hearing none, Board Secretary Coven, ready to vote?
Online voting is open. Director Lingo, how would you like to vote?
Yay.
Director Abraham, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with Directors Clausen, Malone, Williams, Abraham, and Lingo voting yea, and Directors Eastham and Finch voting not present at vote.
Whoops.
I voted. You have a glitch.
I'm sorry, Kim, would you repeat my
So,
vote?
Board Secretary Coven, is there a way to confirm their vote? Because it seems to be some confusion.
Eastham, can you please confirm your vote?
I would vote yay on the
Thank you.
motion.
And Director Finch, can you please confirm your vote?
I'm a yay.
Yay. Thank you. All votes have been cast, and the motion carries with all directors voting in favor.
Thank you. Next up is Director Liaison Report. Are there any items that directors would like to highlight on their report? I'll just highlight one. I hadn't been to a promotion ceremony for fifth, obviously, because we didn't have it ever, but they're going to middle school. Kiddos were so excited. I mean, they talked a lot about next year and what to expect. So I'm really excited that we're able to give them that opportunity. Although the sixth graders, they were excited, but not excited to share their promotion date now. So knowing that we will have that separated next year is really great. Any other items directors would like to highlight?
Director Williams and Superintendent Degner and I attended the student-built house ceremony on Saturday, and I'd just say that it's just an incredible sight to see. If you can get out there and see the work that our students are doing, it was impressive and proud. Yeah.
It is part of the Parade of Homes.
Exactly.
So I missed the presentation, but I made it to Parade of Homes to see it. So yes, if you haven't been able to see it, buy a Parade of Home ticket, go there, and then go look at the other homes maybe. I don't know. But thank you, Director Finch. Anything else?
I just comment, since it's the last time I'll be at all the graduations, that the board members were there, all of us, which is.
You can always come back.
I could, and
Nothing's stopping you.
I tell you what, I'll work to make one.
Okay.
But I just want to say I think it's appreciated that the board members show up. I know it's a really heavy weekend for everyone, but it's appreciated, and it's just, it's really great to see, like, that's the culmination of our work. That's what we're working to do. And to see, again, when I look at it on my calendar, it's always been like, oh my goodness, that's a heavy weekend. But when you're there and you watch those young adults walk across the stage and how proud they are and how excited they are and how enthusiastic their families are, it's just one of those sort of rewarding things that has made this gig special. So just wanted to highlight that.
Absolutely. I agree.
Would certainly agree with you, JP. It's a marvelous experience, especially to see the enthusiasm and celebration of the students' families and friends and loved ones. Yes.
Yeah. All right. Next up is agenda setting. I would call directors' attention to June 25th. We will start our night off with a board work session at 5 o'clock in the back of the room. We will be reviewing FMP 2.0. That will be followed by our regularly scheduled board meeting at 6 o'clock. And we have our equity update as well as the annual assessment protection report, teaching and learning reports. And Superintendent Degner, were there items from the parking lot that you have marked for this meeting?
No, there's two we'll take off there that you just said. We won't be doing any teaching learning report that evening or an equity update. We're pausing those for the summer. You mentioned the annual asset protection report, and we will need a closed session for property after the regular meeting as well. So it should be a fairly light agenda other than the two kind of wraparound meetings. I'm sure we'll have a couple things that make it into agenda setting before then, but nothing right now.
Okay. Anything from directors?
Something I'd like to add to the parking lot, and I didn't talk to you about this in advance, so I'm sorry. But I spent so much time in the car this weekend, and I listened to this NPR story about how junior high, middle school, high school students are using AI to do deep fake, a lot of times nudes of their peers in schools, and how schools are wholly unprepared to address this, that they don't have policies in place, that it's not laid out in their disciplinary protocols and procedures. And so I just wanted to throw that to you all. This obviously not for the June 25th meeting, but wondering, have we thought about that? Do we need to think about it? I think it's going to be a matter of time before we see it here if we haven't seen it already. And, it'd be nice to have a policy in place ready to address it if it unfortunately does happen.
I think you and Director Lingo listened to the same podcast because he's also talked to me about it this week or sent me. I haven't had a chance to review it yet, but I do think that's a good one for us to come back to and visit. So it speaks to a few different concerns there, obviously. So happy to come back to that at some point, and probably a good chance for us to review any policies that we need to make sure are reflective of the concerns, any updates there might be. So I made a note.
And the great thing is, we've already got an AI policy in our policies.
Yep.
And I wonder if IASB also is looking at this and thinking about some recommendations.
Right. If there are additional parking lot items, please, directors, feel free to reach out to myself or Superintendent Degner so we can make sure those get added. Next up, it takes us to a bittersweet part of the agenda, recognition of our retiring administrator. Oh, sorry, I'm like, what? Okay, Amber Alert. We'll see if, okay. We have Executive Director Laura Daly leaving us at the end of this fiscal year. So I would open it up for directors to send her off in only the fashion we can do. Go ahead, go for it. Anybody?
Okay. Yeah, it's always hard to, these are bittersweet. It's super hard to see folks go. Very excited that you get to, I'm assuming it's just retirement, right? Like, maybe. Anyway, moving on. That's exciting, but you know, it's hard. It's, you've been in here, how many years, Laura?
30.
Yeah, and then how long in this role? 8. Yeah, I was gonna say like all of my years. So, you know, it's been great. One thing I've really appreciated, and you've been a big part of this, I think maybe just because of that role and who you are, is all of the collaboration between departments. And that comes up all of the time, touching on all these different areas. So we're really gonna miss you.
Thank you for your years of service. Oh, sorry, Molly. Um,
I'll just have
No,
a
let her
quick
go.
comment.
Go ahead, Molly.
Okay. So Laura, I've known you for a long time, ever since my kids were little and went to Wickham. And there's that great picture of you holding somebody's hand as whatever something bad happened out there. But anyway, it's been great to work with you so many years and to see all the things you've done and a lot of help in developing the MTSS for the mental health piece and, you know, just so many things. And I look forward to seeing what you decide to do next.
Okay. Director Williams, sorry.
do we want to let Director Lingo go?
No. Director Lingo, did you want to say anything?
Congratulations and enjoy your retirement.
There we go.
Thank you for your years of service, Laura, to the district. It has been really an honor to work with you and to see the really great work that you do here. It's always refreshing when you have something to present to us because it's well done, it's thorough, it's we know we can rely on it, and we are definitely going to miss your presence in this room.
So I just want to remind you that you were the first face of ICCSD that I ever met in my son's IEP meeting as he was entering into kindergarten, and then you were my children's principal for many years. And never would I have imagined 15 years ago when I first met you that we would be here together tonight. And again, I agree with what everyone else has said. Thank you so much for all of your years of service. I can attest that you. You left the district better than the way that you found it, so thank you.
And I certainly second that, Laura, that you left, that your contributions to the district over your entire time here have produced a better learning environment for students, and we thank you for that. I was really impressed after a conversation the other night at your retirement party, that you've had so many roles in the district, you know, teaching, administration, in building administration, district-wide administration. Those are important things. And we owe you a compliment and a debt of gratitude for your decision to stay with the district and stay with the students here.
So I will wrap this up. Laura, thank you so much for everything you have brought to the district. As Vice President Clausen mentioned, you've been in that role for just as long as I've been on the board. So it's been great having you as someone when you're presenting you're so excited about the material and about the changes that you led since you were, I believe, our first director of learning supports, and to see the dedication and hard work that not only you, but your team poured into overhauling our PBIS was amazing. And it was always exciting to sit in on those meetings, to learn a lot because it was always brand new and exciting. So I truly do thank you for your years of service and your dedication to the district. And I hope in this next chapter, wherever you land, that you remember your friends here and stay in touch and let us know all the great things that you continue to do once you leave us. So we would allow you, if you want to take a moment to say anything, please go ahead.
Thank you so much. I appreciate all of those kind words. For those of you, I'm just going to pick up the mic. Here we go.
There we go.
For those of you who have a long ways to go to early retirement or just you're like, you can see that finish line, just enjoy every moment because it happens faster than what you actually realize. So I have enjoyed my time in the Iowa City Schools, whether it was as the principal and serving in that role or now as director of learning supports. And I know that the areas that are in my department that are going to be passed off to some others sitting right up here, that will be in good hands. And so I am ready to, got a couple more weeks of work, but I'm ready to pass the torch and appreciate all of the school board support over the years, as well as all of the administrative team's support and the district as a whole. So keep doing the good work, and I will see you around.
Great. Thank you so much. Next up, we can adjourn. No, I'm just joking. Is board director recognition for Vice President Clausen as he leaves us to rejoin the district as a teacher at West High. So I would open it up for directors to wish him well. Director Abraham?
Did you say Director Abraham? Sorry.
Yes.
Okay. Well, JP, you know, when I was lucky enough to be appointed to the board about 2 years ago, you know, it felt a bit like a full circle moment. I remember hiring you from a para job at Northwest. I hired you to teach at West. Knew I had found somebody who was going to be really, really good. And of course you were, and you are. And so I hopefully was a bit of a mentor to you that first year you were there as a special ed teacher. And then certainly you've been a mentor to me on the board and helped me figure out. You didn't even laugh at me when I asked you, what do I do if I have to go to the bathroom? But it's been such a pleasure to work with you, and you know so much. It's really going to be a loss for us. You have such deep knowledge on many, many, many topics, and you know, we may just have to pick your brain still. So we know where you'll be, and thank you so much for all your years of service.
Director Lingo?
I didn't know if this was going to be a roast or not, so I kept my thoughts nice for JP this evening. JP, it has been a pleasure working with you, and never hesitate to reach out with any thoughts or comments. You have been a good person to have on the board that provides a happier perspective than my glass 3/4 empty mine typically does. So thank you, JP.
Directors at the table? Yeah.
Sure. So we can always count on you for bringing perspective. That's what I've always appreciated about you, is the perspective that you bring, your breadth of experience, the institutional knowledge that you bring. We're definitely going to miss that, and your knowledge. What Director Abraham said, you have knowledge on so many topics. I can't even begin. appreciate the empathy. You've always brought the empathy. So it's going to be a huge loss for us, but also a huge gain. And so congratulations both ways. We will miss you, but I'm very happy that you'll still be in the district.
I always think that the strength of a board like this is the diversity of the directors and their perspective. And you bring such a unique body of experience to this table that it's really frankly irreplaceable. And so it's been just a pleasure serving with you and listening to you and getting to hear your perspective and what you have added to this group over your 7 years of service, is you've really made an important contribution and impact in the community. And thank you for giving us your time and your service.
JP, you're clearly bringing a great thing to the students of the district by coming here as a special ed teacher. And you've done great things for the students of this district as a board member as well. I was trying to remember, I don't think I've ever disagreed with you, which for me is telling something. And you have brought a perspective and viewpoint, experience, and a commitment of both empathy and knowledge about how we should operate our special education and our overall programs. Thank you so much for your.
So, JP, this is it. I just want to say I win. I outlast you. No. But no, in all seriousness, I mean, from our days of campaigning in 2017 and the huddle, me saving spots out there on the grassy knoll of Farmers Market, we built a friendship that I have definitely enjoyed and appreciated. We have shared a lot of things that we don't talk about at the board table that's gone on in both of our lives, and I appreciate that bond and that trust that we were able to build. I know that you will be an amazing asset to West High because you were equally amazing at the board table. You provide us with different perspective, but also the passion. You have been so passionate over the 7 years, and I will greatly miss that. But no, when I come to West High for a visit next year, I will be sure to visit my friend in his classroom because I've never been able to see you at what you do, but I've talked to you regarding all of your teaching years, and I know how excited you are for the kids you get to serve. So thank you for the 7 years you have given us at the board table, but also for the many years you will give us in the classroom.
Thank you. All right, well, thanks. I think I got through without tearing up too much. Not that that's a bad thing, but but now I'm starting to feel a little bit. Thanks everyone for this. You know, I think back to when it was at the beginning of Ruthina and I's campaign, and I did not know you, and I can't remember who it was, but they had us to their house, like a campaign meeting or something, and I'm like, okay, here's this lady that's running. I'll get to know her a little bit, and I just remember right away this person said, well, what are your campaign finances like? And at that time, like we were like running against each other, and I'm like, well, she seems nice, but I don't know this lady, and I didn't have very many campaign finances, which I didn't want anyone to know. So anyway, from that time, through all those farmers markets, you know, I remember one thing that we talked about, really, the four of us running that won specifically said, you know, all of the issues were happening, and we would talk about that, but the main thing was we want a board that functions. And we want a board that can disagree without being disagreeable. And we want to put a lot of emphasis on not just what we do, but how we do it. And, you know, we had the why down. All of us had our whys, which I think this board has shared tremendously. It's really the kids. But the how has been really important. And I just have appreciated that certainly with you, Ruthina, and those folks then, and then everyone who's come on that's how we've continued to do this. We had a couple discussions tonight where, we may not agree on everything, but we can do that with civility and with compassion. And I appreciate that folks mentioned empathy, because that is something that I work at, and I try to really live by empathy. So thank you all for supporting me, for being here. I think it's one of those things that'll look back and I'll be like, how did I do that? How did we do COVID? What? I mean, that's just like, wow, we did that. And we were meeting, if you remember, every week pretty much through a lot of that pandemic, because we were constantly making high stakes decisions. So I will appreciate getting the time back. There's no doubt about that. However, I am going to miss these decisions. I'm going to miss having these deliberations with you all. The way that we do it is really inspiring to me, and I'm sure you folks are going to continue that. So thank you, everyone, for allowing me to serve and for serving alongside of me, and for all the great staff. I mean, you guys make this. We have a lot of hard things to decide, but you folks make it easy, because we know we can depend on top-notch professionals who are bringing us their best work, and that part has been very reassuring. And I am excited now to work on the ground, doing the work, with kids and with teachers a lot closer to the classroom. So thank you.
Thank you. And before we just applaud you out, just a quick note that maybe you can come back and visit us, because your plaque has not arrived yet. So you're more than welcome to come and make a community comment for us to then present it to you.
I see how this goes.
Yeah, we're just making sure you come back.
Okay.
But thank you so much. All right, before I adjourn, just a reminder, we do have another meeting right after this. If directors are okay, I had planned on adjourning this and just jumping right into the next one. All right, so is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.